The third key to being an effective leader is being consistent. You know, the one thing that I always admired and loved about Dave Savola is that when I met Dave 22 years ago, he sat down and told me that the two keys to building my business were a weekly meeting and 2 exposures every day. 2 a day and a weekly meeting. 2 a day and a weekly meeting. He said that over and over again. If you asked him 20 years later what the keys were to a successful business, he would say 2 a day and a weekly meeting. If you asked him 22 years ago, how do you make an exposure? He would say 3 steps. Something I need to show you. It's going to take about 15 minutes, and you may or may not be interested. 20 years later, if you asked him the 3 steps, he would say, there's something I need to show you. It's going to take about 15 minutes, and you may or may not be interested. Never deviated from the consistency in what he taught, the simplicity and also the consistency. And that's a very key element of leadership. I've seen leaders that kind of are all over the place. You know, one month they're talking all about this is the way we need to build our business. Then the next month they see some new shiny object. They go, oh no, this is the way we need to build our business. If you ask them one month, what's the best video to show somebody? They go, this is the best video to show. The next month, this is the best video to show. Next month, it's a different video to show. And the problem with that, and John Addison talks about this a lot in his trainings, he talks about the gears of leadership. And he says every time that leadership makes a slight change, think about the gears in like a clock. You have big gears and you have little gears. He goes, every time a leader makes a slight movement in a big gear, the little gears just start going all crazy, right? Because they got to keep up. And that's what happens. As a leader, when you make subtle changes in your philosophy and your strategies, it may be a subtle change to you, but for the associates following you and taking lead from you, it totally throws them off. And if you do it over and over and over again, it's hard to get any consistency in your business. So make sure as a leader that you get very consistent in your message and consistent in your activity. What does that mean? Well, showing up every week for a business briefing. You know, it's hard to tell the team that you have to be here every week and then you're not there every week. You know, if you tell your team to be here every week, they show up next week and you're not there, guess what? They're going to follow that lead. They're not coming the next week. Then you show up the next week and you go, oh, my team's not here. No, it's because they didn't see you when they did show up. So you have to be consistent in your leadership, consistent in your activity. That also means being consistent in your attitude. You don't ever want to be that leader where someone's like, I wonder what kind of mood they are in before I call them today. It's hard to follow a leader like that. You want to be consistent in your attitude. They should know that your attitude's always consistent when they call you. And yes, it's not human nature to be upbeat and positive 100% of the time. We just can't do it. Things happen. However, the one thing I've learned as a leader is sometimes the biggest favor I do someone on my team is not to pick up the phone and answer it. And the reason is if something just happened and put me in a really negative or down mood, then one of my leaders call me, the last thing I want to do is put them in a negative or down mood. So a lot of times something happens to me, it's negative, I take a step back, I go, you know what, this might be a good time to go for a walk. And I just go for a walk for 30 minutes. Not only is it good for you, but it also helps me clear my mind, think about the solution to what just happened, how am I going to handle it, take a deep breath, come back, handle the situation. Now I'm ready to take those phone calls, return those calls, because I want to have a consistency in my attitude. You know, you want to make sure that, again, even if there is something that goes on that you're thinking, you know what, I'm not quite sure I agree with that, or I'm not quite sure that I think that's the right thing to do. The worst thing you can do is take that information to your organization. Because what happens is, 15 minutes later, an hour later, you probably talk to another leader who explained some things that you really didn't understand, or maybe put a different perspective on it that you didn't understand. So now you're thinking, okay, no, I get it. I understand where we're going with this. I'm on board. I'm excited. But what happened was because you shared the negativity when you shouldn't have with your organization, that's taken on a life of its own. And so now you may not be able to repair the damage that you did by sharing that when you didn't take the time to maybe get the proper perspective yourself. So the best thing you can do always is if you have a concern, things like that, take it up to your upline executive director, upline platinum, network vice president, whoever that might be in your marketplace, so that you can help get more clarity and understanding. So you always want to be consistent when you're talking to your organization. Always want to be consistent in your attitude when you're dealing with your team. You also want to be very consistent in your leadership. And what I mean by that is when we talk about strategies, Here's how as a team we're going to build our team culture. Here's how as a team, here's how we're going to recruit more associates this month. The message has to continuously be very consistent. Because as I said, if you start deviating and 1 month you're doing one thing and the next month you're on to a different thing, it can really throw off your entire organization. So make sure as you're building a big business that you're consistent in your approach, you're consistent in showing up every week, you're consistent in your activity, you're consistent in your attitude, and you're consistent in your leadership strategies so that you can build a more consistent team all the way around.